So guys, thanks so much. Right now, we're going to welcome on a couple of guys that are going to be no strangers to you all here soon on FreightWaves Airways. It's my honor to introduce Paul Gibson and Charles Gracey, hosts of Cents Per Mile, to this show, FreightWaves Now. And guys, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Hey, thanks for having us. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well, and great to see you on today. And I know we're going to have much more of you on in the future. Jumping into it now, what can we expect from your upcoming podcast and this next season that's going to be airing on FreightWaves TV?
Yeah, so Cents Per Mile is trying to bring the driver's opinion to the forefront and connect it with the industry issues. So Paul and I are working diligently to bring some great content out that's going to help everyone move the needle in attracting today's top drivers.
And that's huge because I think that's one of the areas that we definitely need to be talking to a lot more is really what's going on with those driver side. And Paul, can you jump in and tell us a little bit about some of that perspective that you're going to be offering? Because we over here talk about all the time, of course, rates and really big industry trends and really stuff for some of the freight executives, things like that. But really, such a huge audience is there for the drivers.
Well, I mean, a big part of it is our industry is willing to acknowledge a lot of the issues the drivers face, but not a lot of people are willing to talk about solutions because nobody wants to talk about the causes. So we kind of go over those, but then also take it from a recruiting carrier perspective, like what sort of solutions are available and what you can actually do to help the people out on the road have a better time.
And Charles, when we're looking at those recruiting really trends happening right now in the industry, this is something that you're, of course, no stranger to. We're going to be some of the different dynamics that you've seen play out over this really rough freight season that we've seen in our industry over the last year and a half or so.
Yeah, so it's a different market, and unfortunately for the drivers, the power's not in their favor right now. Most carriers are near capacity for various reasons, as you guys discuss all the time. So there's a saturation of unemployed drivers on the market right now. And with that comes the ability for carriers to be a little bit more choosy in who they're going to bring into their organization. Now, the reasons that they're doing this is to reduce turnover and cost and everything else because the margins are so slim. But in doing so, we're seeing a lot of drivers being left behind on the market right now, and they're having a tough time finding an employer. They're having a tough time finding that job that they thought was going to be easy to find. And we're nearing the holidays, so there's a lot of things that are compounding the issue right now. And I just want to remind everyone that the pendulum's going to swing. We're going to need these men and women on the road, and we don't want to lose them during this little bit of a downturn.
And Paul, I think this is an interesting time to really kind of course, kick off your next season of Cents Per Mile. We're looking at the current industry trends and going into 2024. We're going to be some of the big items that you're going to be looking for in this upcoming year. Of course, the flipping of the calendar doesn't mean that all of a sudden there's a new industry out there, but we're going to be some of the trends that are going to be following into this upcoming year that you're going to be watching closely.
Well, so, I mean, there's a lot of different things that happen in the recruiting space and a lot of stuff that happens for drivers. So one thing that we're for sure going to be covering a lot is, and that we talk about all the time, is driver pay. And then secondly, communication, because, you know, with the ebb and flow of the industry, it's really important to have communication between carriers and drivers. And what does that look like? And then also, you know, Charles being an expert on it, you know, recruiting situations like trends that are going on. Like, for instance, we're going to cover ghosting. We're going to cover how do you deal with, you know, marketing to drivers when, you know, everybody's doing that and drivers are just constantly getting bombarded with ads. How do you stand out? And then we'll actually be bringing on drivers to talk about what their perspective is on these issues to try and, you know, help carriers get it together and do a little better.
I'm excited for that aspect of definitely bringing on drivers to hear their perspective. And Charles, I have to ask, what is the trust level like for some drivers out there? Because I have a cousin, he's a driver, and whenever we get on the phone, there is a lot of hesitancy with whoever he might be partnering with, but really at the end of the day, it definitely seems like that trust aspect isn't there. And a lot of times I think it's for a great reason.
Oh, it's definitely for many great reasons. And this is some of what we're trying to bring attention to is a lot of times people are sitting in these offices coming up with these very expansive pay packages and offerings for their drivers, but they're not putting themselves in the driver's shoes. So it's not being received the same way it was intended to be received. Not to mention, there's a lot of disconnect between what recruiting and marketing is saying and what actually happens in operations. And these are real people showing up to work just like you and I, trying to do a job, provide for their families. So we have to be diligent in making sure all those dots connect and that they align with the message that we're carrying out. So this is why that distrust happens. Not to mention, they're a little bit behind in realizing that the market's shifted and it's not really in their favor. And by the time they're realizing it, we're on top of holidays. So imagine the stressors that are going to come from making a bad move before the holidays.
Definitely a lot of stressors and a lot of variables at play. And Paul, I can only imagine that you guys are going to start hitting a lot of topics, of course, that are going to just be around issues in the industry or really decisions being made that are maybe a little bit questionable on their intent. One of the things that come to mind, of course, is putting governors on trucks or really different types of regulations. Can we expect you guys to start hitting on some of those topics as well as we start to look at different types of regulations that are looking to be pushed out onto the freight world?
That is absolutely going to come up quite frequently, probably every episode, something to that extent. And if there isn't a new one that pops up, we're just going to probably keep harping on the ones that have popped up previously, much like speed governors, because I mean, at that point, when you put those limiters on the trucks, maybe not so much for owner operators, but for a lot of the other drivers out there, they're already told how to get there, when to get there. Now they're being told how fast to get there, but they only get paid mostly per mile. So it's like you're paid on your performance, but your performance is regulated to the point to where it is what it is.
And Charles, of course, before I let you guys go, I got a chance to catch up at F3. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience, some of your favorite parts, some of the folks that you were able to connect with?
Yeah, so F3 was fantastic. It was full of great content. I always enjoyed being able to see all the tech that's coming out and being a former driver, being able to compare it to what I would see as a value. So that was pretty important. Outside of that, the networking opportunities that were available there and the fact that you guys do not know how to miss a beat. You guys were on point across the board. It was just an exciting event and looking forward to seeing all the things that are going to come from it.
Paul, looking forward to having you on FreightWaves TV as well. And for those that are going to be watching now, also, can you give us a little bit about your F3 feedback?
I actually didn't get to go to F3, but I followed it on X, and shout out to Freight X. Yeah, I definitely had a lot of FOMO. The TI concert was awesome.
The TI concert, definitely missed your presence.
You have to live vicariously through me on that one.
It was a great time.
A lot of phone calls.
And Charles, in closing, when and where can people start catching your upcoming show here on FreightWaves TV?
Yeah, so you can find Cents Per Mile on FreightWaves TV every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Right before What the Truck.
Awesome, Charles, Paul, thanks so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to your episodes.
Thank you.